Well, hi everyone, and greetings from Northern Michigan. This is Bob the Science Guy. Today we're going to take another look at Max Engen and the Tartarian Empire. Today we're going to discuss his theories that all wars occurred at the same time and were used as a cover-up for the overthrow of the Tartarian Empire and the hiding of their technology and civilization. So, let's cue up the music and get going.
And as I've been pointing out, there's also certainly a lot more to history than meets the eye. You know, I'm of the opinion that all of the wars that we hear about that were fought in the past, as I've said before, I think they were all fought contemporaneously. The Napoleonic War, the War of Genghis Khan, the War of Troy. All of these wars were actually the war for Tartaria.
Now, one thing that I'm very curious about, and I hope that some of the viewers are as well, how do you determine whether or not you want to fight a war with Bronze Age weapons or breech-loading rifles? I mean, do all sides get together beforehand and say, okay, well, this is the weaponry we're going to agree to use? What would have happened, for example, if the Trojans had bolt-action rifles? So, you've got to get both sides to agree to use the same weapons, since all of these wars were concurrent. Wars are fought for a number of reasons, and I have not yet seen one fought for Tartaria. I've seen them fought for trade routes, as the Trojan War was. I've seen them fought for economic and humanistic reasons, as the Civil War was. I've seen them as part of a greater conflict, as the American Revolution was. Perhaps, Max, you can give me an example of a real war that was fought to hide a culture.
Yeah. And the colonization that we see around the world, the colonization of Australia, the American War of Independence, and possibly even continuing on to the American Civil War, which happened generally over that same 100 to 200 year period.
Well, Max, though the American Revolution, the Napoleonic Wars, and the American Civil War were fought over the same 60 or 70 years in time, they were separated from the Trojan War by more than 2,000. The weaponry was different. Even comparing the American Revolution to the American Civil War, we had rifled muskets, we had breech loading and repeating weapons that weren't available at the time of the Revolution. Yet you are suggesting that people would choose to use Bronze Age weapons in an era of the repeating rifle. It doesn't make any sense, Max. I mean, really, it doesn't.
All of these wars, I would suggest, are cover stories to hide the overthrow of the Tartarian civilization. And I think that it's still ongoing. We're doing it now. All the wars that are being fought now are to continue to wipe out the last traces of this civilization.
Okay, so Max, let's just kind of go over the basics of warfare. Generally, there are two different sides in a war. There's side A and side B. If you are correct, one of those two sides has to represent the interests of Tartaria, and the other side, of course, would be opposing the interests of Tartaria. So let's take the American Revolution. So were the English the Tartarians? Were the Americans the Tartarians? Or were the French the Tartarians? Perhaps you could help me clear that up. Apparently, I don't know.
And the police that we have here and these legal systems that we have here, this is just a prison system, folks, and all the police are prison guards.
Okay, so just to follow up on that last question. Now, you say the police are the prison guards in a prison system. So would that make them the authority and us the Tartarians? Or are they the Tartarians trying to reassert their influence and we're the ones trying to destroy Tartaria? It's just so confusing, Max.
Even the fact that you can't defend yourself. I mean, if you escalate the level and if you do this and if you do that. Here in Australia, if you defend yourself in any way without calling the police, you've committed a crime. How does that work?
Well, Max, I don't know how it goes in Australia, but I know how it goes in America. Now, for example, say somebody threatens me with a knife, okay? That's threatening me with deadly force. I do not have an obligation to call the police if I'm under an immediate threat. I just shoot them, okay? But if I have another option I am obligated to take that option rather than employ deadly force myself. For example, if you are greater than 21 feet away from me, I can retreat. Whereas if you're within 21 feet, I can shoot you. All right? That's the way it works, and that's the way juries look at it.
You know, the police will tell you that if you pick up a stick to defend yourself against a man, well, you've escalated the conflict, therefore you have just become the aggressor. But what if the guy that is attacking you is 3 times the size of you, some steroid android fruitcake who's coming and monstering you, and you are not able to pick up anything to defend yourself? You have to call the police.
Okay, now Max, this is something that I just don't understand. Are you just having trouble grasping this reasonable force issue? If you are being threatened and have a reasonable fear of your life or safety or that of others, you can use an appropriate response to that threat. It is not appropriate to pull a gun on somebody if they cut you off in a parking lot. It is appropriate to do that with somebody that's charging you with a knife or is large enough to be able to kill you if they are allowed to get to you and they are demonstrating the intent that they wish to do you great bodily harm. Yes, you will have to justify it, but you can justify things. There's such a thing as justifiable homicide. So, to suggest that you are completely helpless unless there's a police officer standing next to you is disingenuous. Every society recognizes a person's right to defend themselves.
The police, and if you call the police will say, well, no crime's actually been committed yet, so you need to call us after the crime's been committed. So in other words, let him kill you and then call us after he's killed you and we'll go and arrest him.
Now, Max, you're starting to go off the rails here. That is absolutely not true, and it's easy to demonstrate it is not true. Have you ever heard of a restraining order? Have you ever heard of making threats to public figures or individuals? This is a crime. You don't get it, do you?
That's how it works in this country. This sort of stuff is absurd, folks. And it's all done to disempower people, to take people's sense of self-worth away, to make people incapable of defending themselves and turn them into easy targets for the system.
Did you say something, Max?
And the system knows exactly what it's doing, folks, and I would also suggest that the system is in possession of technology that we do not know about. Technology they've always had. I think the technology we're using now is technology that they have always had. It's always been there.
Hey, Max, can you show me a picture of Abraham Lincoln holding one of these things? How about Julius Caesar? Anybody?
It's reversed to the type of technology we should be using. We should be using free energy, ethereal type of technology, all of the stuff which did exist and continued to exist up until about the mid-1800s.
Recall that this is the same guy that said fireplace, andirons, and metal firebacks were part of an energy generation system.
And not the sort of technology we're using now, but we're being set up. And you've got to wonder how it's done, whether it's an earthly thing, whether the whole earth is a machine that they use to do this. And who they are is another good question.
You know, when I first started looking at the flat earth, I really didn't think that there was anything more foolish than claiming the earth is flat when we can actually see that it's round. I was wrong. This is absolutely ridiculous. You know, I've been looking at Max Ingham and the mud flood Tartarian Empire now for the last few weeks. And I'll tell you, each episode seems to get sillier than the last one. You know, thank God I've only got 2 more segments to look at, and I may be able to squeeze those into a single episode. But how people buy this, the level of paranoia that has to be out there, and the level of ignorance of basic historical facts, and common sense and critical thinking, absolutely amazes me sometimes. So, I'm going to go ahead and close out this episode here. We're going to leave the question of who they are to the next episode. If you guys remember, I've got my Patreon and the channel website listed in the descriptions. I put a lot of work into these. They still have a ways to go, but you can see kind of a work in progress with them. The Patreon, this is not a pay-to-play channel, but if you want to make a donation, that's a great way to do it, just to show your support. And any donation would be appreciated. It's expensive to run this thing. So, this is Bob the Science Guy, signing out from Northern Michigan. Take a second and hit that little like and subscribe down there, and follow along and join Team Bob. I look forward to having you with us in our continued journey into the Tartarian mud flood, the flat earth, other conspiracies, and basic STEM education. Take care, guys.